So, hello guys. So here are we for the next space of which is as the next space covers an essential part of our entrepreneur's journey and innovator's journey, which we are hailing for. So, joining us all the way from India is Mr. Sandeep Kochar, the founder and the storyteller at Blue Minds Consulting, and he's a superstar in impactful stories, storytelling, how to make ideas worth doing, worth listening, and much more. He was featured as one of the top voices on LinkedIn for the year 2019. Blue Minds Consulting focuses on storytelling and personal branding. He had also worked in he has also worked in various prestigious organizations such as British Council, where he was senior manager of the governance and reporting. He has a postgrad in the prestigious from the prestigious IIM Bangalore. Sandeep believes that failure is the road to success, and he advocates people to perceive failure as an opportunity to grow from their life. Sandeep, it's an absolute honor to have you with us. It's over to you.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to share my presentation, and very good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, wherever you are, whichever part of the world you are in. I'm going to cover a little bit around idea pitching and storytelling. So how do you kind of pitch your idea when you are kind of trying to, could be raising money, could also be, when you're trying to actually get some people on your team. It could also be when you're trying to maybe even explore partnerships. You could also be even looking at how do you kind of take your idea to the next level. So I'm going to cover a little bit around what and why of storytelling, and we'll go a little bit about what's the process that we need to follow when we are storytelling. We'll look at a few frameworks. We'll look at how do you pitch an idea. We'll look at different ways of doing that. So that's pretty much what we're going to cover. And if you have any questions, I don't know how the Q&A works, but what I'll try to do is, if you have any questions, just put it on the Q&A window, and I'll try to pick them up when we come to the end of the session, or maybe I'll try to kind of do it even during the session. So I think stories are very important today, and you must be seeing stories on all platforms now. Everything is storytelling, right? From how people are selling brands, to how they're trying to attract customers, to how they are marketing. So storytelling is being used every single place, and the only reason why it's being used so much and also it's doing so well is because stories really appeal to human emotions. And when you are in an emotional state, you are vulnerable, right? You establish a connect. You can also understand feelings and also associations much more deeper than would be if you were logical. So there are these two kinds of audiences you will find: logical audiences and emotional audiences. Now the interesting part is all logical audiences are also emotional somewhere, and therefore it's very easy to kind of when you're communicating, you're using storytelling. That's a very easy way to communicate better. Now before we kind of get into all details around it, see, a story is basically, it has a character, and it could be anybody. It could be anybody, it could be a country, it could be any kind of a person, place, or thing, right? And that character goes through certain conflicts during the story, and that's when the story starts to kind of go to the next level, where you have a conflict, and at the end of it you go to the ending of the story. So after the conflict, there's a resolution that happens. Basically, your character gets something, and things are good at the end. So the climax is where the real story builds up to, and then after that it comes down. So now when you look at storytelling, you'll have these characters, you'll have scripts and all of these things, but more importantly, it has to be written or told in keeping in mind very clearly the audience. Now a lot of times we don't get that right, because we require one very basic quality, which is empathy. So empathy is extremely important when you're doing any form of storytelling or even communicating. So do you understand what the reader, viewer, listener is really going through? And therefore, when you tell your story, that person should be able to resonate with the story. So if you look at, and there's a simple 5-factor model here, but if you look at this 5-factor model, you'll find connectedness, relatability are actually both related in many ways to empathy. And so is awareness. If you really look at it, in terms of, are you aware of your own self first, and also are you aware of what the other person will go through, will feel when you say that thing. Now, I'll introduce a very simple concept here about impact versus intent. So let's say you're getting onto a flight, and you have a very good, you have a good pilot, and he gives you a very good takeoff, smooth takeoff, no jerks. The plane goes in the air instantly, and during the flight, it's, let's say, an hour long flight. The flight is really good. You get good food to eat, good people serving you, no crying babies, and if you like babies, well, there are loads of them on the plane. And the flight is really, really good. And then comes the landing. Now the landing is basically, how the landing is, right? It's just maybe a few minutes, or not even a few minutes actually. Now let's assume that the landing is really bad, right? And the pilot is not able to control the plane, and he takes the plane off the runway, and he goes into a field, and everybody almost um, end up in a point where you fear that you may lose your life. Now, why I shared this is because there's a takeoff, there's the flight, and there's a landing. And now let's assume they give you a feedback form at the end of it. How was your experience? Now, as you look back to your experience, my guess is most of you, when you give that feedback, and let's say it's on a scale of 1 to 10, how good was your flight? I'm sure most of you are going to say it was not good at all. And some of you may be kind and say a little better. Now, if you look at it, there was nothing wrong in the intent of the pilot, right? But the impact mattered more. So if he couldn't give you a good landing, that mattered more. So impact is more important than intent. And in storytelling, that's the key. If your impact is good, the story sells. If impact is not good, it doesn't sell. The other part is authenticity. If you're authentic as a person, people are able to get that vibe from you, that this person, the story that the person is saying is very true. I think that really builds a very deep connect or bond as well. And therefore you will see that on social media also, you will see that people connect more with people who are authentic or real people. There are very few people. People do show different faces, and there is a saying called "fake it to make it," but that really doesn't help the brand or any story that you're trying to sell as much. Now, the last part of storytelling is really about inspiring action. So really, you're just trying to inspire people through storytelling. You pick up some inspiration, and then you go ahead and do something in your life. So that's pretty much how you kind of look at storytelling in a nutshell. I'll now concentrate on two frameworks that I've developed based on my own understanding of storytelling. The first one is a very simple framework called the triple E model, which is entice, engage, and educate. Now, just to kind of give you a sense of what it means, so entice is basically, it's that the hello, the hi that you say, the greetings. Entice is also, maybe your handshake. These days, it could be a smile on your face. It could also be, if you're on a phone call, then whatever the first few words that you say, that's really the entice. It could be the dress that you're wearing. It could be also, it could be, how you come across as a person, in the first glance. So that's the whole thing is about entice. Now, if you're writing an email, for example, the entice is the subject, of the email. The entice is the first line of greeting that you use. If you are pitching, let's say you're making a business pitch or a presentation, the first few words that you say and your first slide is really the entice. After that, it's all going to go into a different direction because of your entice. Entice is to attract an audience and essentially get them really interested in what you're trying to say to them. So if you understand your audience really well, and if you share, for example, something that the audience relates to, for example, if I were dealing with a very young audience, then I would talk about FOMO, because that's what the current generation goes through, right? You have a lot of fear of missing out and just too many opportunities, and you don't know what to do and what not to do. So that is really the hook. It's the hook in the story, which will get you to kind of read a story or listen to a story. The second part is the engage. So once you have attracted them, you basically now need to tell them a proper story, right? It's that whole build up of the plot, the character, what the character goes through, and then you take it to a climax, and then you kind of take it down. Now, in your case, if you're pitching a business idea, ideally you should start with why are you pitching this idea, and the best way to start would be, if it is your problem. So in this case, if it is your problem and you've gone through certain problems, you may be, for example, you may say, look, I was standing in a queue in this, movie theater trying to get a movie ticket. Now, if that is what people go through on a day-to-day basis, not only will you be able to tell the story well, but they'll be able to relate to it as well. So that's the other part where you kind of pick up the other part, which is more importantly, the engage part, where you start to build a connect with the audience through the story. So in many ways, entice is like, you want them to get onto your bus, and engage is when you really take them in this journey to wherever you'd want to take them to. Now, many times what will happen is also that in business presentations, you've got to make sure that you have the right kind of information, the right kind of data that you're presenting. But more importantly, it should be something that is interesting for the person who's listening or viewing to your presentation, right? The last part is the educate, which basically means you got them interested, you told them the story, and now you want them to do something about it. So it could be the lesson learned of the story. It could be something you're trying to sell, something you're trying to buy. Now, if you do it too soon, the educate too soon, you will obviously miss the plot. You won't be able to create that impact. Now, I don't know how many of you have got these phone calls where a salesperson is trying to sell something to you. These bank conversations that happen, or somebody calling, would you be interested in a loan, or would you want to buy this? Now, these conversations, now see, the order of the conversation is very important. It has to go from entice to engage to educate. Now, in all the sales conversations, these sales folks who are on the phone, they call you, they do it the other way around. They go with educate first. They basically tell you what they want. Then they go to engage, and then they come to entice. So basically, they do it the other way around. And since they do it the other way around, you don't buy their story. Because, for example, let's say I'm trying to sell a loan to you, and I say, look, are you interested in a loan? If I start with this, or we are offering a loan, I will kind of switch off because I've not built that relationship with you, or if I'm trying to sell it, you will switch off because you've not built that relationship with me. And then by the time I realize that, and let's say you said, no, I'm not interested, and you want to put the phone down now. And then I start saying, no, this is the interesting thing about this loan. So I start to now engage with you now. But you are obviously switched off by now because the entice didn't happen. And the last is when I start to say, hey, look, but I have a very interesting offer for you, which is much lower than the market, and you get this. And so now that should have been my entice, right? So I'm not able to take that forward. So therefore, you need to kind of make sure that you are following this framework really well in terms of first the entice, then the engage, and then the educate. The what's in it for me that you kind of, hear about, or that is the whole audience perspective, which basically means you need to segment your audience, understand who your audience is, what is it that they would be reading. So if I were making a presentation, I would do my homework around who's my audience, what are the backgrounds. I would even go to the extent of listening to any work, or reading any work or anything they've written, or listening to their videos or whatever would they've done, so that I would understand the language they speak, how they think. I have to get into their shoes. If I get into their shoes, then I can obviously crack the deal, right? Now, the other part is overselling and underselling are very important traps that are there. So sometimes we oversell and sometimes we undersell. A lot of introverts will undersell and a lot of extroverts will oversell. If you oversell, basically the other party starts to think, hey, there's something fishy. If you undersell, they start to think you're not confident. Now, a good pitch would be on the line. And therefore, it's so difficult because it's not doing more and not doing less. It's just doing what is enough. So you need to kind of walk on that line between overselling and underselling when you're storytelling. Now, the other component of storytelling is, we talked about empathy, but it's also about observation. When you are making that presentation, can you quickly observe what's happening? Are they interested in what you're saying or not? If not, then can you change your story? So you have to quickly take feedback, and while you're doing it, and move and change. Now, in a presentation, you've got to keep it very brief. Put the best point forward first, talk about the problem, then move to the solution. Now, why should you talk about the problem? Because obviously that's why you started working on this. And there is the problem domain and the solution domain. Now, as you all, and since you're all students, if you have done internships or if you've ever worked in corporates, what happens is we spend a lot of time on the solution domain, and we don't spend too much time on the problem, because the idea is, okay, let's quickly solve the problem. And that is why most people are not able to ideate and come up with amazing ideas. Now, problem domain is different, solution domain is different. You need to spend enough time on both. If you understand the problem very well, then you can solve the problem. Now, if you've yourself been through the problem, then obviously you can talk from a first person point of view. Any pitch from a first person point of view will always do better than a second or third person. For example, if I say, look, I saw my friend struggling, he was not able to complete his assignments on time, and therefore I launched a business to create assignments for students. Now, for me, that will still tell me that, look, okay, he saw something and he's doing it. But if you say, look, I couldn't complete my assignments and I lost a year of my life because of it, and now I want to just build this idea forward so that many other people do not go through the same. That's much powerful, right? Because it shows that you're going through it. So therefore, first person, second person, third person also very important in storytelling, which basically means how do you relate to a situation and how do you then convey that to the audience. Now, storytelling, observation is one part. We talked about empathy. We talked about observation. We've talked about first person, second person, third person. We've talked about the triple E approach. There is one more model that is there in storytelling, which again, this is again something that I have created, based on my own experience. It is a CDE model, which basically is C is for content, D is for delivery, E is for evidence. Now, when we say content, it basically means, what is the why behind it? Why are you kind of doing it? What is the idea that you are, focusing on, and why are you actually, working on that idea? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? So that's the content that you have. Now, the second part of all of this is D, which is the delivery. Now, in today's world, most of it is virtual, but who are you pitching it to? What is the intent versus impact we talked about, right? The communication method is very important. You need to change the style based on your communication method. So if it's not a face-to-face presentation, then obviously it should be different. And also when you are doing delivery, you kind of now observe how people are, receiving you, and you change that accordingly. So if, let's say, the speed is going very slow, or let's say they're not asking any questions, so how can you change that? Is there a way you can change that? There are several techniques that will work very well, one of which is mirroring, which basically means you mirror the audience. Whatever they are doing, the way they are doing, you mirror them. And that's when you can establish a better connect as well. Now, if suppose they start to ask you a lot of questions, and how well do you kind of manage those questions? How do you get into the groove of answering those questions? That's very important. So you need to also come very well prepared. Now, the last part is evidence, which is social proof. So if your problem is genuine and people are facing it, there is, social proof that that's a problem. Social proof could also signify authenticity here, that if they find you authentic. So suppose, let's say you're pitching an idea to 4 people. If one of them finds you pretty good, he can influence the other person next to him, and maybe they all can influence each other. If one of them has switched off, then, he will become the guy who's going to say, hey, look, I didn't find this idea interesting. Now, You could attach evidences of your idea also, in terms of, okay, why is this idea going to do well? Is it just a blue sky thinking that you've done, or have you done your homework? Have you come back? Here, I would say, if you've done a POC, a proof of concept, a pilot, or any specific thing, if you have run, which shows that your idea may work, that is the best way. An experiment is also fine if you are looking at an experiment, for that matter. So all of these could be used when you are kind of trying to pitch your idea. So yeah, I think that's pretty much on this CDE model. And I'm going to just go on to, now I am happy to take questions here, because we've got some time, and I just kept some time for any questions. If you all have, you can put in the Q&A window, and in the meantime, I'll also see if there is anything else that I can, share with you. But if there are any questions, you can put it in the chat also if you want.
Instead of chat, you can even raise your hands, and then you
Perfect,
can.
perfect.
We
Yeah,
already have one person now.
go ahead.
I'll just see. Jyoti, you can just unmute and speak.
Hello, everyone. Yes, sir, this was really amazing. Like, I got to learn a bit more about the storytelling and the pitch stuff. So I just have this one question. Like, if you are in the audience in between them, so the idea that you said, like mirroring your audience, so could you just elaborate on it so that I can have a bit more idea?
So on the audience, basically, you should filter your audience and say, okay, who's your audience? So for example, will the audience be a consumer of your idea? Will the audience be a receiver of your idea? So let's say, suppose your idea is that you're going to help, you want to set up a social venture to help poor people. Now, in that case, the people you're pitching it to, they're not going to be the consumer of your idea. However, if the idea is really, really good, maybe you may convince them, because they also may be having the same feelings towards a set of people they may want to help. So you need to understand their background. So suppose if they've been, let's say, suppose one of them has come from a middle class, or a background which is from a small city, or has had a tough upbringing, then obviously somebody may be able to connect with you. So it's important that you get into their shoes and understand who your audience is and why would they buy your idea. This question needs to be answered. Why will they buy your idea? If you can, and for every person and every type of audience, this will be different. So for example, there is three types in which you can classify your audience. One is readers, the other is writers, third is listeners. Now, readers are people who love to read a lot. Now, for them, different kind of content is required. They may want some very, very, content which can help them think, reflect, and grow. Writers, on the other hand, they may even be looking for an aha moment, which they would want from the content. And listeners will be somebody who will want to hear a story, right? Something very interesting. Could be short, simple. So you got to classify your audience. You could use readers, writers, listeners, or you could use any other model where you could classify your listeners or your audience and see how do you pitch that idea to them. Suppose a person is from the marketing background, that's a different kind of a background from somebody in finance. So the finance person will be mostly thinking about how can I make money out of this idea. Now, most ideas, why do they not get through? The simple reason is the ideas are not feasible, or they will not help you make money out of it, because at the end of the day, it's business, right? So you want that the idea should be profitable. The story should be relatable, but the idea should be profitable. So the story can only hook you, but the idea, there has to be something interesting, that there's a space which nobody's been able to get into and you want to try. Or what is it that is different about you that you're bringing to that idea? So some part of you should also be part of that idea. And that is how you can relate to these audiences better. Does that answer? Perfect. I think,
Thanks so much.
Yeah, go ahead. I think a few of you have raised hands. Please go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, I'll just.
Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Sir, I'm Ramna. I just had a small question. So whenever with I'm coming from the other side. So you're coming from the industry side, we're coming from the student side, and we see a lot of ideas being thrown around, and we see a lot of discussion happening on ideation and discussing the problems. So to stand out, is it important for us to show more of implementation than problem discussion? Because you mentioned the other way around.
Yes. So when I said I talked about the problem part of it, is basically that you should understand the problem well. Now, however, at the same time, the solution, when you talk about the solution, you should talk about, hey, we saw this problem, we understood the problem, this is exactly what the problem was. We went out and we found two solutions to it, and we tried one of them. And these are the results of that trial that we did. So experiment, trial, proof of concept, pilot, it could be any of that. Now, 99% of the ideas, not just from the student community, but 99% of the ideas that come out, even in business, people who are working, they pitch ideas, they get rejected because nobody's tried them out. So really, if you have a great ideas of no use, ideas are nowhere close to execution. Execution is more important than ideas. Ideas are something that is hypothetical. Execution is real experience on the ground. So if you can go ahead and experience something and then share that experience, that will convince and give the evidence to that person that this is possible. Does that help?
Yes, sir, sure. That
Perfect.
answers.
Who would like to go next?
We can have Angelina, Angela, if I'm pronouncing right.
Yeah, go ahead, Angela.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, sir. It was really very insightful. Well, I had a question. You just said that when we are saying our stories, the first person, if we put I, me, and tell our stories, it will have much more impact and influence on the listener and the other people, the third person maybe. But so when we will be talking about the very delicate issues of our society, let's say, for example, I want to work for suicide prevention of my country and try to help the sector of mental health. So if I go for idea pitching on my social cause, I may not be comfortable to share the idea that yes, I'm a person of I'm a person who has tried to commit suicide in my life. I mean, it is a very delicate part, right? So in that case, like, what is the criteria for making us realize that in this case we should use third person and in this case we should use first person? Like, how can we like distinguish it? That's the first question. And second question, you say that if an idea does not generate money, that's of no use. That's absolutely true. But like, how do we actually be able to know that how like we can generate the money? Like most of the times we have amazing ideas, but it just ends up nowhere. Like we can't figure out things. So please.
Very good questions, Angela. Good questions. The first question that you asked was, now if I were in your place and if let's say I'm making a solution to help people, not commit suicide for that matter. Now, if I have a personal story which I can share, I think that is very powerful. Now that is up to you how vulnerable you would want to be and how would you want to tell that story. You can talk about how many years back you had once, gone through this whole situation where you felt that you had lost yourself or you went into depression, and then you try to solve that, and now you want to make a difference and you really want to do something about it. That is much more powerful than just talking about I want to do something for suicide prevention. My question will be, okay, why do you want to do something about suicide prevention? So that relatability will not come, that connectedness will not come. Also, I will not feel it's authentic. It's just that you're trying to do something for the sake of it. So people will relate to it only when you are able to do something, when you do something in that. So I would say, there in those cases first person is very powerful. Now how would you want to tell that story? You can obviously take yourself back to the past, how you overcame it, how you emerged out of it, but now you want to help everybody. Now that is the way you would kind of talk about that story. The second bit is, in fact, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you will see failure put there very clearly in my profile, because I feel that a lot of people go through it and nobody talks about it. It's only about success and successful people, and therefore that will give inspiration and hope to several people that it's possible. Your second question was around, if your idea is not making money, what is the way out? Well, every idea can be monetized. You just have to have a very, very sharp business acumen in terms of trying to understand how will you monetize it. I think the question is not that whether it can be monetized or not. The question is how will you monetize it. So if you can answer that question, that will be I would say that will be one of the best ways to kind of do that, because you will be able to get an answer to that whole bit about how will you kind of monetize it. Now, I will maybe let me just see if I can share something with you all, which may be very interesting for you all. Also, just give me a minute. I'm just going to see if I can. So we have something called, we've just recently designed a bot to help people. It's a personal coach, and it's also in many ways it's a storytelling bot. Now the idea of the bot was very simple, that we'll put some content out to people so that people would benefit from it. That was the core idea that we started off with. And interestingly, this bot went viral, and thousands of people have used this bot now. And now, since it's gone viral, we've kind of understood, okay, now that, because the idea was not to make money out of it, but really to help people. And now that we have an audience, there's several things we can do with it. So I would say you should think about, okay, how can you take this idea to the next level? That is very important. How can you monetize the idea? So the question has to be about how can you monetize it, rather than thinking that, oh, I can't do it, or all of those kind of things. This idea is, for example, if it's a not for profit, then
But
how
in
can
developing,
it?
well,
Yeah,
in
go ahead.
developing countries like Nepal, like what happens is that only the commercial businesses are able to monetize themselves. That also in a very long run, when they keep on failing and trying and trying. For any kind of businesses which has which has social, like which has the reason for social impact or social change, like it's very hard for them to sustain. And so that's why I have asked this question: how to monetize to a lot of people, a lot of businessmen, but they are not very comfortable to give ideas, and they're not very comfortable to share their knowledge with youngsters like us.
So to monetize any idea, you need to understand the core principle of business. Why do you buy things? You buy things because you get something out of it. What is that something you will give them that they will buy it? So either you get an audience there and then you can sell, or you sell them something that they really want to buy. So you have to find out and you have to understand how business works. Why do you buy a dress? It gives you happiness. Why do you buy 10 dresses? It gives you more happiness, right? So why do people shop? So you have to understand the psychology of a person to be able to understand what is really happening. So that is the way I would look at it. Okay, any other? I think there are a lot of questions here. I'm just going to see if I can take a few.
We can take one more question.
There are some questions on the chat. After pitching, some investors tend to make us extremely intimidated. How do we overcome this tension? Yeah, obviously investors want to test you. Their idea is very simple. Will this person be able to do something or not? So that is where the challenge is. And also, see, for students, what happens is, and I was we're trying to judge, I was a part of a contest that is going on for students. And, a lot of pitches came, but, a lot of the ideas that I heard were not ideas that were on the ground. I think you have to go out in the market and do it. If you're saying, okay, we'll do market research, why don't you go ahead and do market research? Come back with the results, understand what the market research told you, and then go ahead and implement. So all of that is what you need to kind of look at when you are trying to, really, in many ways, when you're pitching your idea, you should, if you have done your homework, because it's not about a conversation that within a conversation, the person is going to find out whether they're trying to find out will you will be able to execute the idea or not. Remember, it's not about the quality of the ideas, whether you can execute or not. Okay. I think, yeah, we can take one more question.
Yes. May I go
Yeah,
ahead?
go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So hello, Mr. Sandeep. I really enjoyed your session. Thank you for such a bright ideology. My question is that when I consider storytelling as an art and us as artists, then not all the people are interested in some kind of an art form. So, going through that, a storyteller goes through various emotions. And me personally speaking, sticking to what your originality is very difficult sometimes when there are situations going around in the atmosphere near you. Like COVID has hit us. So, the way I express myself is going to differ because I have experienced some or the other emotional backlog. Now, how do I keep my originality in that storytelling and yet again reflect my personality out of it? Because eventually my story is going to sell more than my product. So
Yeah, so I think the context matters a lot. When you are selling something in a different context, context changes everything. So you should be aware of the context. You should be aware of the people around you to whom you're pitching the idea, and then be spontaneous trying to create. It will come over time. It's not going to come. It takes years of practice to kind of become a good storyteller. So it will come over time where you will try to understand yourself better. And at the end of the day, it's how confident you feel and how comfortable you are with yourself. It is not what you're trying to create for someone else. It's what is your relationship with yourself. If you yourself don't feel that this idea is good or you're not confident, you can't convince anybody.
right.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think
Thank you so much
I'm
for
going
the
to,
time.
yeah, I'm going to leave the website link also here for you all. And I'm going to just see if I can, you all can go to our website as well, and you'll get some more information there as well. At the same time, if you can go to my LinkedIn profile, in the about section, you'll find the link for the bot. Do use it. It's a beautiful bot created to help you in your personal and professional life, and spread it around. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sandeep sir, for your time and your valuable insights. Unfortunately, we are so out of time. We cannot take more questions. There are a lot of questions in the chat box I can see, but I guess they can. Do you have a mail ID where they can actually email you a few more questions if you
Okay,
want?
yeah. So I'll just put down my mail ID. You can email me your question. I'll respond.
Yeah. So I have the email. I'll send it to on the chat plus on the Telegram group so that you can email the questions if you are not get you did not got the opportunity to hear. So thank you. We'll have a short 10-15 minutes break and we'll start again with the next session.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.